Hey everyone, so we all know how snowbally jungle can be. Generally, the most important part of the game is the early stages for junglers. If you get rolling at that point, you're usually able to just take over the game and stamp your authority everywhere. When reviewing low elo games though, we often see the same mistakes over and over again, which are costing junglers the early game so often. We're going to review 3 platinum elo games to show how disastrously bad some of these common mistakes can be and how to avoid them. Alright, let's head into our first replay. The matchup that we'll be covering is Hecarim vs Graves. Hecarim starts bot side doing red, Krugs, and Raptors, which we briefly want to mention he neglected to kite into wolves and heading toward blue. But here's where his mistake comes in. He starts double tanking the blue and Gromp to kill them faster. Graves invades and chases Hecarim down for a kill. Okay, so what was the problem here? The first thing to identify is that while Hecarim tends to be a farming jungler, there is usually a split between different types of farming junglers in the early game. There's those who have healthy, fast clears, and those who struggle, particularly on their first clear of the jungle and until they get their first core item. Hecarim is one of those. It's not that his clear speed is bad, but if he full clears, he tends to get pretty low on HP. Generally, you avoid either Gromp or Krugs on these types of junglers. You farm everything else and head to Scuttle Crab to hit level 4. Then you can look for ganks or just double back to the camp that you skipped, recall, and reset your route. The problem was, even if Hecarim didn't get invaded here, by doing all of his camps, he'd get ridiculously low and have no smite charges left. Graves will easily win the scuttle fight, and then Hecarim just gets double scuttle. He loses even if he doesn't die at this Gromp. This is mostly a problem when you know the enemy jungler is also paddling to the same side of the map as you are. At the start, we saw Cho'Gath immediately in lane and the enemy bot lane lagging behind. Clearly, Graves is paddling topside. This is a clear indication to not get greedy with your clear. You can do what Hecarim is doing when you know that the enemy jungler is pathing away from you, since your HP shouldn't matter, but otherwise, you can easily just lose the game on the spot. Let's swap things over to Graves' perspective after the kill. We're going to show you what he does and give you a mini quiz to see if you can spot every mistake that he made. Okay, we believe that there were 4 mistakes made here. Let's see if you caught on to any of them. First is the obvious lack of smite while chasing Hecarim down. Gromp got pretty low here and he should have used the smite as he was chasing. He may have even been able to save his flash with the speed from Nimbus Cloak. Maybe. Instead, he's forced to redo the camp, wasting valuable time. Number 2, doing the scuttle itself. He should use E immediately after his first auto and obviously he misses Q. Mistake number 3, and the biggest mistake here, he passed around mid lane in order to not be seen, which costs him valuable time. Many low elo junglers tend to gimp themselves by taking routes in order to avoid being spotted. But you can often just ask yourself 2 questions and realize that being seen doesn't really matter most of the time. First, am I under a time constraint at the moment? For Graves, the answer was yes. Hecarim is going to be speeding towards that Scuttle Crab, hoping to get anything after the disastrous death near his blue. Every second counts for Graves here. And secondly, if you're spotted, can the enemy team actually respond in a meaningful way? Looking back, we know that Yasuo killed Annie a bit ago and is coming back into lane with his shiny new items. Likewise, his bot lane seems to be dominating and have priority. It doesn't matter if you show yourself going to Scuttle Crab, the enemy can't do anything about it. By the way, if you're enjoying the video, a sub to the channel would be incredible. And finally, the last mistake isn't really a mistake, but could be a correction if any of these other issues aren't mended. Let's say that you would be late to this scuttle even if you did everything else right. You can just skip the topside Scuttle Crab and rush to the other. Hecarim is 100% rushing towards the bottom side scuttle unless he's absolutely crazy. He knows there's nothing left in his own topside jungle. This means that you can rush there and defend it from him, and it's guaranteed that you can just go back to the other after you secure this one. Unfortunately, we saw Graves failed at all of this, and Hecarim was left largely unpunished. The game goes even for a while, and Hecarim is matching levels with Graves and even manages to kill him at some point. This should not have been the case after the insane start that Graves was offered. Both of these players had very easy wins this game. If Hecarim did his route correctly and kited camps and actually used his potions, he would have been full HP as he did blue. And if Graves jumps over the same way, he'd be in melee range of a full HP Q-stacked Hecarim. He would get blasted. Likewise, if Graves punished remotely well, it should be a complete jungle diff this game after what did happen. If we put a challenger player in this situation, this Hecarim wouldn't have been able to play the rest of the game. Graves would just continue to invade and take everything. Alright, let's head into our next replay. The matchup this time is Jarvan versus Echo. Jarvan is starting at red and we already don't like what we're seeing. Since Jarvan is a level 3 ganker, that means he's pathing toward bot lane. We don't want to be harsh here, but you really want to avoid pathing towards enchanter lanes during the early game. Not because enchanters are bad, but rather because the players playing them tend to be a bit ELO inflated. Enchanters are overly rewarded for playing safe and sitting back while they shield their carries. They are usually very unlikely to offer you any good gank setups most of the time. That's not to say that you never visit an enchanter lane, but the situation should be obvious enough to warrant it. Otherwise, we don't recommend relying on it as a consistent ganking option. We see Jarvan paddling bot, and a gank opportunity is just so unlikely here. That is, until Lulu gets caught and Jarvan can counter the situation. Tragically, he overforces the Lucian kill and his team ends up being traded on 2 for 1 at the end of the day. Jarvan should have been happy that he got the opportunity to even gank this weird lane state, because Lulu got caught. When Lucian was snared, he should just commit his EQ and get the flash. Overcommitting with his own flash when this is so uncertain to work is definitely the worst move possible here. Echo in the meanwhile got to chill and farm everything he wanted to. He got the top lane scuttle into a transition gank mid, right into another scuttle. And Echo going this uncontested versus Jarvan in the early game is usually game over due to the scaling difference. We see this all the time, where junglers love to gank their enchanter lanes. Unless the gank is super obvious to work out, we definitely don't recommend heading down there. Just let them do their thing where they scale safely and win the game by pressing their shields. Likewise though, overforced ganks are also not good. Think back to all those times that your own teammates died of the most obvious jungle ganks. It's the same on the enemy team. It feels like players want to die, especially in the lower ELO brackets. You don't need to commit to crazy plays to score kills. Let them happen naturally. That Jarvan Echo game where Echo got a huge early lead, guess how he threw? Yep, he overdove and threw the game entirely. Alright, let's take a look at a final replay which is just all over the place bad. The matchup is Master Yi versus Udyr. At level 1, Yi's team looks to invade Udyr's red side jungle. No kills are scored, but the problem here is that Yi doesn't commit into taking the red buff. If your whole team goes into the enemy jungle with you, you should generally just stay and take the buff unless your level 1 is insanely bad. Reason being is that while Yi goes back to blue, Udyr likely went to take his red since he knows that his own red is likely gone. From that situation, all Udyr has to do is path directly back to his own red and Yi is boned. The red buff to blue buff advantage is huge in the early game, especially on auto attack based junglers, so there's no way Yi can invade solo. Not only that, but Udyr's team can obviously collapse faster since they're in closer proximity. Yi just doomed himself to getting 3 buffed. That being said, let's take a look at what actually happens. Yi does blue, then Grump. Udyr meanwhile did red, then chased a Garen he would never catch, and just like the jungles before him is sitting near Raptors overforcing a mid lane gank that is very obviously warded by the way Katarina is playing. Master Yi sees this going on, paths middle, and punishes the Udyr who kept forcing a gank for his level 1 Zoe. Afterwards, he helps Katarina shove and starts invading. This is a big no-no, at least in solo queue. Katarina is basing and Udyr is booking it over here. Luckily for Yi, Udyr fail flashes and overchases into Katarina, who thankfully cancelled her recall. Another Udyr death, and now Yi can easily steal the red buff. We're not saying that everything Yi did was incredibly bad, but we think he got pretty lucky. His poor decisions were covered up mostly by Udyr making some really questionable choices himself. This game should 100% be over at this point, right? Well, let's see what happens. What do you think should be the number one thing on Yi's mind at this point in the game? Recalling is definitely the correct answer here. One of the biggest issues that we see when junglers get an early lead is not looking fast enough for an early recall. It can be tempting to continue invading and denying camps, but recalling early on is incredibly important. We're sure that you know this, but having both the talisman and machete part of your jungle item speeds up every jungler's clear significantly. You don't want to be out on the map with just one of them for very long. At the moment, Yi has 1400 gold, enough for red smite and 2 daggers. Phasing for that would speed up his clear so much that he could probably farm twice as fast as Udyr. Instead, he goes bottom, and what do you know? He overforces a gank, costing him and Morgana their lives. After respawning, he paths towards Gromp. He saw Udyr go towards middle and die, so he looks to invade and take the enemy Krugs. Not bad. Only to then proceed to sit behind the enemy bot tower, hoping to somehow dive a set support with early game Morgana and Master Yi. This goes on for 30 seconds before he goes and does Dragon. While he does it, Hecarim scores yet another kill on Udyr. This prompts him to invade the Raptors, once again another sound choice. So, based on what you know, where do you think Udyr is on the map at the moment? Well, Udyr hasn't seen Yi in his topside and knows that he sat bottom for a while. Udyr likely knows to path topside. So, Master Yi walks straight through mid and takes the most dangerous route where he's forced to face check the river and gets himself and Hecarim killed. This entire early game was atrocious by Master Yi. He just happened to get lucky and get an insane lead, yet he managed to throw it. It was bad decision after bad decision. That being said, one simple concept would have saved him entirely: recalling. Had he recalled here, he never dies and proceeds to power farm like crazy. Udyr would have a much harder time catching up to him had Yi just recalled and farmed. Also, near the Raptor camp before his second death, Yi had enough gold to recall and complete his Blood Razor. It's not always true, but you should definitely be making it a priority to base the second you get enough gold for your completed jungle item most of the time. Had he based for those items, Yi would be so strong that all of his decisions would be idiot proof. It's impossible to throw when you literally can't lose fights. By the way, you should know where these videos come from. Our hyper improvement platform Skillcapped is by far the best place to be if you want to actually improve at League of Legends. You can input your rank before you sign up and see where we think you'll climb to. If you don't reach that rank while actively using Skillcapped, you can claim a full refund. That's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped or you get your money back. We offer this because our service really does work, and if it doesn't, you shouldn't have to pay for it. So be sure to check us out after this. Alright everyone, that's going to wrap it up for this video. These are easy to fix mistakes that you definitely shouldn't be committing as often as these players are. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.